The air inside the medical dome was dry and sterile, buzzing faintly with the low hum of purification vents. Victor Orlan sat on the examination bench, his shirt folded neatly beside him, and a thin transparent band was wrapped around his upper arm to monitor blood pressure. He'd been through standard checks before, at Earth spaceports and off-world consulates, but this one was different. The alien scientist standing across from him didn't even blink because it had no eyelids. Its name was Dravik, and it was tall and pale, with a semi-translucent skin that shimmered under the lab lights. It moved like it had studied humans but still couldn't quite mimic how they stood still. "You consumed what again?" Dravik asked, its voice translated through a hovering black orb. Victor scratched his head. "Gas station hot dog. Wrapped in bacon. Came with a cheese sauce that smelled like melted plastic, but it tasted all right." Dravik tilted its head, recording something on a floating translucent screen. "And this was purchased willingly. I was hungry, it was raining, and I had $3 left." "So yeah." Dravik turned to the side console, muttering in its own language before the orb translated its words. "This explains the elevated levels of benzoic acid, sulfites, and several compounds we have yet to identify. Why are you not dead?" Victor shrugged. "Good genes." "No," Dravik said, stepping closer with a scanner. "It is not your genes. It is your enzymes. We have never seen anything like this." Victor sighed. "Look, this is the third time this week I've been poked and scanned. What exactly are you looking for?" Dravik paused. "We were monitoring your people for adaptability. Environmental, biological, psychological. Your species handled radiation from your own energy sources without full biological collapse. You digested substances that would kill most carbon-based life. Our council assigned us to investigate your biochemistry further." Victor blinked. "So I'm being studied because I lived through a gas station burrito? That and the fact you consumed a beverage containing both ethanol and phosphoric acid while nursing a stomach ulcer and remained functional." Victor let out a breath. "That was one rough Tuesday." Dravik turned away and tapped a control panel. A narrow tube extended from the ceiling and began to fill a glass vial with his blood. "Your enzymes are doing something unstandard. We wish to replicate the breakdown process." "Wait, like clone my stomach?" Dravik hesitated. "No, that would be unethical. We are creating simulations first. But your cooperation is required for further controlled toxin ingestion." Victor narrowed his eyes. "You want me to eat more junk?" "Controlled toxins. Carefully measured. For science." Victor groaned and leaned back. "I'm not a trash compactor document. You are the closest biological equivalent." By evening, Victor was lying on a padded recliner, a tray of suspicious-looking gelatin cubes beside him. Dravik hovered nearby, recording everything. He picked one up. "What's this one?" "Preservative compound mixed with synthetic capsaicin. Equivalent to your Earth's level 20 chili challenge." Victor popped it in his mouth. "Tastes like shame." 30 minutes later, he was sweating through his shirt and gripping the sides of the chair. "Your vitals are rising but within tolerable limits," Dravik said, completely neutral. "I think I see my childhood dog," Victor muttered. "Why are you doing this again?" "We have encountered species across the quadrant whose ecosystems were destabilized by industrial contaminants. They perished quickly. Your species, however, thrives in chemically saturated environments. We must understand how." Victor wiped his forehead. "Maybe we're all just stubborn. That is not a measurable variable." 3 days later, Victor was walking through the research facility with a limp and a bandage on his right arm from a failed blood draw. Dravik had assigned him a suite with a private bathroom which he'd used often thanks to the latest test round involving something labeled fermented jellyfish acid. He stopped outside the observation room. Inside, holographic simulations of human enzyme reactions were playing on a loop. They showed molecular clusters ripping apart toxins with casual efficiency. Dravik was speaking to another alien, smaller and blue-skinned, who Victor hadn't met before. The orb translated. Subject metabolized over 1,100 artificial compounds without liver failure. "This is unprecedented." The blue alien looked disturbed. "How is that possible?" Dravik responded, "We do not know yet, but we have narrowed it to 3 key enzymes. We are calling them VO1, VO2, and VO3. After Victor Orlan. Victor raised an eyebrow. You're naming enzymes after me now? Dravik turned. It is customary to name newly discovered biological functions after their source. Great! I've officially become a medical footnote. Later that week, Victor was brought into a new lab room. This time, he wasn't alone. Two other humans, a woman named Fiona Beck and a man named Harris, both from different parts of Earth, were seated beside him. Fiona looked pale. They gave me something that tasted like battery acid and peppermint. Victor winced. You all right? She nodded weakly. I think so. You. Worse. They made me eat a cube that was literally labeled industrial grease simulation. Dravik entered with a tray of thin wafers. These contain trace elements of common industrial pollutants found in over 70 planetary ecosystems. We must see if your enzymes can adapt in sequence. Harris groaned. Can we at least get some water? Dravik paused, then gestured. Hydration is available in the corner dispenser. Please proceed. Victor stood, legs stiff, and walked over. As he drank, he noticed a live feed on the wall showing a stream of data that looked like enzyme activity in real time. He pointed. What's that? Dravik joined him. We are observing your blood samples under varying pH levels. Victor stared. You're testing how my blood reacts in acid and alkaline. So far, your enzymes continued to function under conditions we believed were lethal. That sounds bad. It is not bad. It is fascinating. Over the next week, Victor underwent over 20 tests. Some were simple, like eating a preserved meat stick from another planet's ration stores. Others were brutal, involving carefully measured doses of chemicals that mimicked environmental toxins. Each time, his system responded differently, but it always responded. His enzymes adapted, shifted, compensated. One night, Fiona collapsed during a test involving synthetic tar derivatives. She was rushed to the medical bay. Victor waited outside for hours before Dravik emerged. She will recover. Her enzymes were not as reactive. We have discontinued her participation. Victor looked up. She almost died. Dravik nodded. This is why we study. To understand limits. She's not a lab rat. She volunteered. Victor stood, wavering slightly from nausea. You ever think maybe there's a reason most species can't handle this stuff? That maybe we shouldn't. Dravik tilted its head. And yet you do. Victor didn't sleep that night. The next morning he was back in the lab, tired but ready. Dravik had a new compound, a synthesized toxin found in the soil of a mining colony. It had caused mass extinction in every species exposed. Victor took a breath, picked up the vial, and drank. Hours passed. He felt feverish, his stomach churned, but his vitals held. Dravik's screen lit up in a frenzy. Your enzymes broke down the compound into harmless proteins. This defies our models. Victor leaned back, dizzy. So what now? We replicate. We synthesize your enzymes and test them on other species. And if they work, then your biology may save ecosystems across the quadrant. Victor blinked slowly. All because I can eat a taquito and survive. Your resilience is a gift. Victor smiled faintly. It's also a curse during taco night. Dravik stepped forward and offered a small capsule. Rest now. This will ease the nausea. Victor took it. Thanks, document. As he swallowed the pill, he wondered how many more tests lay ahead. But deep down, he also knew that if his weird biology could help prevent the collapse of entire worlds, he could stomach a little more discomfort. After all, he'd survived gas station sushi. Victor's breath fogged the chilled glass of the nutrient chamber as he leaned forward, watching the simulation of his own digestive enzymes flicker across the monitor. The room had been dimmed to reduce cellular degradation, or so the lab assistant told him. The assistant, a lanky, hexapoidal creature with a membrane hood and an accent the translator orb flattened into monotony, had no name Victor could pronounce, so he called it Tassel. Tassel was currently trying to stabilize a protein sample that had begun replicating too aggressively after exposure to Victor's enzyme VO3. The protein was bubbling in a shallow dish under a containment field. You should not be this effective, Tassel said without looking up. Biological systems are not meant to metabolize acid salts and petroleum residues simultaneously. Victor sipped from a mineral solution pouch that tasted like damp socks. I grew up near a plastics refinery. Maybe I'm just evolved. No, Tassel said, adjusting the enzyme's pH buffer. You are not evolved. You are anomalous. A slender doorway hissed open behind them. Dravik entered, holding a sealed case. We acquired a sample from the outer colonies. A fungus that breaks down synthetic adhesives. We want to see what happens when your enzymes encounter it in the gut biome. Victor blinked. You want me to swallow glue mold? It is not glue. It is the organism that eats glue. That's so much better. Dravik placed the case on a sterile tray. The fungus inside was pale green with faint threads that twitched like muscle fibers. Victor leaned closer to the glass. It's moving. It reacts to ambient carbon. Do not exhale on it. Tassel made a choking sound. He already did. Dravik ignored that. We've embedded trace markers in the mold. If your gut flora resists or cooperates, we'll know. Victor sat back. You ever consider trying this on something not alive? Dravik turned. We did. The mold disintegrated all synthetic sample containers within 11 minutes. Only organic containment remains viable. So I'm a petri dish now. Tassel tapped a control panel. You are more than that. You are a whole ecosystem. Victor sighed. Fine, but I want oat crackers this time. Not those protein slabs that taste like cardboard dipped in printer ink. Dravik nodded. We have adjusted your dietary supplements. 2 hours later, Victor lay reclined inside the observation dome. A thin catheter monitored his gastric pH, while a non-invasive probe hovered over his abdomen, mapping microbial activity in real time. The mold had been baked into a small biscuit and eaten under supervision. Now everyone waited. A new alien entered short, with a metallic shimmer to its skin and compound eyes that clicked when it blinked. It observed Victor silently for a moment. Dravik gestured. This is Inspector Teal. The council sent it to review our progress. Victor gave a lazy wave. You're just in time to watch my stomach become a war zone. Teal's voice rang through its personal translator. You allowed the human to ingest the active strain? He insisted. Tassel lied immediately. Victor gave him a look. I said I'd do it if I got crackers. Teal stepped closer to the monitor. The enzyme activity is accelerating. This pattern resembles a defensive response. Tassel adjusted the display. No, not defensive. Cooperative. The mold is being guided. Victor frowned. Guided how? Dravik leaned in. Your enzymes have begun restructuring the mold's carbon acquisition pathways. It's merging with your gut flora. Teal's pupils dilated. That should not be possible. Victor shifted uncomfortably. I feel kinda warm. Tassel immediately hit the emergency cooling system. Core temperature rising. 78.2 Celsius. No weight Earth scale. 38.9. Dravik checked the readout. Immune system is responding but non-aggressively. It's adapting. Victor pulled the blanket tighter. Feels like the flu. Not the bad kind, just the annoying kind. Teal turned to Dravik. You are altering a live human's internal biome without full council approval. Dravik didn't flinch. The subject consented. Victor raised a hand. I signed a waiver. In 3 languages. Teal stared at him. You understand we could be triggering a chain mutation. Victor squinted. Are you saying I'm gonna turn into glue mold? No. But your microbiota may acquire traits not native to your species. If those traits are passed on, it would constitute cross-domain transfer. Victor blinked slowly. Wait. You mean I could give someone else mold's stomach just by, like, kissing them? Tassel made another choking noise. Dravik stepped in. We're isolating the enzymes before systemic transfer. No traits will persist beyond this experiment. Teal didn't look convinced. Containment protocols must be re-evaluated. Victor sat up slightly. Okay, hold on. What happens if this mold bonds permanently? Dravik hesitated. You may digest adhesives more efficiently. Victor stared. So I could eat tape now? Possibly. Teal turned to leave. I'm filing a report. This project is officially under review. Once the door closed, Tassel exhaled through his upper gill ports. That went well? Victor groaned. I feel like my intestines are doing algebra. Dravik tapped a syringe. This will dull the inflammation. We'll monitor for the next 6 hours. If your temperature stabilizes, we'll begin enzyme extraction. Great, Victor muttered. Wake me up if I start glowing. 3 hours later, Victor stood in the decontamination stall, rinsing off under a mist that smelled faintly of citrus and ammonia. The mold had settled into a dormant phase and his vitals had normalized. The medical tech monitoring him, a creature with 2 necks and no visible mouth, handed him a robe without comment. Back in the observation dome, Dravik was running simulations based on the updated enzyme behavior. The screen showed the mold's carbon structures being reprogrammed by Victor's enzymes mid-digestion. It looked like a dance, one molecule folding, another shifting, both adapting in tandem. Victor walked in, drying his hands. So, am I officially part fungus now? Dravik turned. You are not infected. You are hosting a temporary biome hybrid. Your body is teaching it how to survive without harming the host. Victor sat down. That's either amazing or horrifying. Tassel handed him a fresh nutrient bar. We have never seen a digestive system negotiate with a foreign organism. Victor bit into the bar. Maybe we're good at deals. Dravik didn't laugh. Your species is biologically transactional. Your enzymes offer compatibility in exchange for non-lethality. Victor chewed slowly. You're saying my stomach cuts deals with invaders? In a manner of speaking. He leaned back. And you guys thought we were primitive. Tassel adjusted a side monitor. This could change interspecies medicine. If we can replicate your enzyme logic, we may create universal antitoxins. Victor looked up. You mean like a cure-all? Not a cure, Tassel corrected. An adaptive filter. Something that teaches other biologies how to survive their own toxins. Dravik nodded. You may be the blueprint. Victor exhaled. No pressure. Later that night, the lights dimmed to their night cycle hue, soft blue washes that mimicked lunar shadow. Victor lay on the cot in his quarters, staring at the ceiling. A faint rumble in his belly reminded him the mold was still in there, dormant but present. He turned sideways, pulling the blanket tighter. Somewhere in the lab, Dravik and Tassel were preparing the next stage: enzyme isolation and synthetic replication. His blood samples had already been sent to 3 other research vessels. Victor closed his eyes. He didn't feel like a hero. He felt like a guy who ate the wrong thing and accidentally became science's favorite mistake. Still, if his weird biology could stop one more species from choking on their own progress, maybe that was enough. He drifted off, stomach gurgling quietly, not with pain this time, but with purpose. Victor sat upright on the padded diagnostics bench, staring at the tray of test items arranged in a sterile arc before him. A translucent cube, a pale yellow capsule, and a small dish of what looked like clumped soil shimmered faintly under the lab lights. The smell was faintly metallic. I'm not eating dirt, he said flatly. Dravik gestured to the dish. It is not soil. It is decomposed matter from a failed terraforming experiment. We sterilized it. That doesn't improve my appetite. Tassel adjusted the display, pulling up a screen filled with color-coded graphs. We're not requesting ingestion. Merely exposure. Your saliva contains catalytic agents we believe may neutralize certain mutagenic residues. Victor raised a brow. You want me to spit on it? Precisely. He exhaled, picked up the dish, and leaned forward. You know, this is the weirdest science fair project I've ever been part of. Dravik didn't respond. It was focused on the readout, adjusting parameters as Victor let a small amount of saliva fall onto the sample. The reaction was almost immediate. The clumped material began to break down, darkening first, then separating into crystalline flecks. Tassel's eyes twitched slightly. That took less than 7 seconds. We predicted 30. Victor leaned back. So I'm corrosive now? You're adaptive, Dravik corrected. Eyes on the screen. Your salivary enzymes contain peptides we haven't cataloged. Something in your body is still modifying itself. I thought we were done with the digestion tests. We are, Tassel said. This is extrapolative. We're mapping out the secondary effects. Victor rubbed his temples. I'm not mutating, right? No. But your enzyme expressions are responding to previous exposures. Your body's compensatory systems are operating beyond autonomic control. He blinked. So my biology's just freelancing now? More like improvising. Dravik turned from the console. We need a control group. Another human, similar exposure history. We must determine if this is unique to you or indicative of your species. There aren't any others on this ship. We requested a transfer. One arrives in 20 hours. Victor stretched his legs. At least give me a break until then. You are free until secondary analysis is complete. Refrain from ingesting anything unapproved. He raised a hand. Scout's honor, though I was never in Scouts. Several hours later, Victor wandered into the environmental simulation room, a vast dome filled with carefully controlled microclimates. He stepped into the Earth habitat section where a patch of grass was growing under artificial sunlight. The air was warm and smelled faintly of ozone. He collapsed onto the grass, arms behind his head. A soft chirping sound echoed from the next section over some alien equivalent of birdsong. For the first time in days, his body felt still. No churning gut, no feverish tingling under the skin, no strange aftertastes. Just grass and silence. You should not be here, came a voice behind him. He rolled to a sitting position. A tall, green-skinned alien with a crest of flexible filaments stood in the doorway holding a narrow scanner. Didn't see a sign? I am calibrating the humidity gradients. Your presence affects the readings. Victor got to his feet. I'll leave. Just needed somewhere that didn't smell like a cleaning supply closet. The alien hesitated. You are the enzyme subject. Victor, he offered, wiping grass from his pants. I am Kellen. I reviewed your digestive data last cycle. Victor raised an eyebrow. Exciting stuff? Disturbing. Your body exhibits no consistent pattern. Every exposure results in a different adaptation. I guess I'm versatile. No. You are unpredictable. We consider that dangerous. Well, it's not like I'm weaponized. I just ate some questionable food and got famous for it. Kellen tilted its head. You misunderstand. We fear your species does not recognize its own volatility. Victor looked down at his hands. We do. We just tend to deal with it after the fact. You should leave this chamber. He nodded once. Fair enough. Back in his assigned quarters, Victor found a sealed packet on the table with a note from Tassel. For baseline consistency, consume before next analysis. Inside was a flavorless nutrient gel, the kind that clung to the roof of the mouth unpleasantly. He took it without protest, then lay down. The room lights dimmed gradually, adjusting to his circadian rhythm. He drifted off for the first uninterrupted sleep in days. By the next morning, the second human had arrived. She was taller than Victor, with dark curly hair pulled into a tight knot and eyes that scanned the room like she'd already cataloged every exit. She wore the same loose medical tunic he had, though hers looked crisp, untouched by digestive trial. I'm Captain Rena Malik, she said, shaking his hand firmly. Retired. Sort of. Victor Orlan. Not military. Definitely retired from normal food. They sat across from each other in a glass-walled lab, separated by a low table with two sealed dishes. Dravik stood between them. Both samples contain identical compounds. Your reactions will be monitored and compared. Rena opened her dish. Smells like burnt rubber and disappointment. Victor smiled. Then it's authentic. They each consumed a small portion under observation. Victor felt the usual tightening in his chest, the faint burn behind the eyes. Rena pressed her lips together, then swallowed without comment. Tassel adjusted the monitor. Initial reaction. Victor's enzyme cascade initiated within 8 seconds. Rena's began at 17. Dravik nodded. Both within expected thresholds. Now we monitor secondary expression. They were moved to separate rooms, each wired with passive scanners. Victor sat in a reclining chair, sipping water while the system tracked his vitals. A small screen displayed comparative enzyme activity. After 2 hours, Dravik entered with a datapad. Your enzymes have begun a tertiary fold. They are mimicking a structure we observed in the fungal hybrid. Victor sat upright. I haven't had any contact with the mold since extraction. This confirms residual encoding. The structure is informational, not biological. So my enzymes have a memory? In a functional sense. They recognize patterns and reuse effective adaptations. Victor rubbed his jaw. And Rena? Her enzymes remain static. No tertiary expression. This confirms your pattern is not universally human. It is specific to you. Great. I'm a walking anomaly. Tassel entered behind Dravik, holding a small container. We isolated the peptide responsible for the memory effect. We believe it can be synthesized. Victor narrowed his eyes. For what? Dravik turned. A biochemical primer. A trigger that teaches other systems how to adapt as yours does. Victor stood slowly. You want to reproduce my enzyme logic in other species. We want to replicate the adaptability. Controlled. Safe. You will not be needed further. He folded his arms. So you're done feeding me lab sludge? Dravik nodded. You will be observed for 24 cycles for any residual effects. Then you are free to return to your origin planet. Victor sat down again. What happens to the primer? Tassel placed the container into a secure case. It will be tested under high containment protocols. On simulation constructs only. Victor looked between them. And if it works? Dravik paused. Then your anomaly becomes a cure. Later that cycle, Victor stood at the viewing deck, watching the rotation of a nearby moon. His body felt quiet. Not a note, but balanced. The discomfort had passed. His stomach felt like his own again. Rena joined him, sipping from a metal flask. So you're the miracle stomach. More like accidental medicine. She smiled faintly. Better than accidental weapon. He nodded. I'm just glad it's over. Dravik approached behind them. Victor, Orlan. Your final scan shows stable enzyme levels. No further mutations. You are cleared for departure. Victor turned. You're not keeping a backup of me somewhere, right? All samples are anonymized and restricted. Your identity remains confidential within the research logs. He exhaled. Good. Rena raised her flask. To surviving bad decisions. Victor tapped his knuckles against it. And turning them into solutions. They watched the moon shift through the stars, the silence not awkward, but earned. Nothing more to be tested. Nothing left to prove.